Hi everyone, I'd like to welcome you all and thank everyone for joining us. Before introducing our speakers for today, let me briefly introduce about EducationUSA. So EducationUSA is a U.S. Department of State network of over 400 advising centers in more than 170 countries and territories. The network promotes U.S. higher education to students worldwide by offering accurate, comprehensive, and current information about opportunities to study at accredited post-secondary institutions in the United States. We have 6 EducationUSA centers in Japan at the U.S. Embassy and Consulate. EducationUSA Tokyo hosts today's session. If you have any questions, please contact EducationUSA near you. So today we will learn about the co-op programs in the U.S. through Northeastern University as an example. So now please join me welcoming 2 speakers for today. One joining us virtually, Sally. And
hello, hi, nice to meet you.
Hello. So, okay, I will hand it over to Sally now. So let me.
Great. I'm just going to share my screen, if that's okay. Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let me just share screen. Let's see. Okay, 1 second. And can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Sally, and yes, I work at Northeastern University, which is in Massachusetts, in the center of Boston. And so I'll just be going through a little bit of background about Northeastern to give you an understanding of, a typical kind of co-op school. And then I will go into what co-op really means. And, I'll be able to ask or answer questions towards the end. But yeah, a little bit of background about Northeastern, just so you have an understanding of like the history of co-op as a kind of case example, and then what co-op means. So perfect. So Northeastern really has been ranked either number 1 or number 2 in cooperative education, which is co-op, for a number of years now. This year in 2023, we're ranked number 1 in the US. So we're really proud of that. Our co-op program has been in place for over 100 years, and we're one of the more established schools that integrates co-op into our educational model. Let's see. So again, a little bit about the school. We are comprised of 9 schools or colleges within Northeastern. As you can see here, we have health science, art, media, and design, College of Science, and business. All of these, as well as College of Engineering, and that's the college that I work in. Northeastern currently has almost 42,000 students. Around 22,000 are undergrad, and almost 20,000 are graduate. We have over 90 majors and concentrations, and we have 13 campuses, the largest being in Boston. However, we have satellite campuses throughout the US, in Canada, and in the center of London, which is a more recent campus. In terms of global impact, we really strive to be a global university. We have a very large number of international students. I believe we are one of the schools in the US currently that has the most international students in terms of number of students. And they coming from all over the world, predominantly India and China. I would say the majority of our students are from there, but we do have a very large population of Japanese students. I was asked to get the number of Japanese students. It was actually really difficult to get that number, so I don't have that. However, if you would like that information, you can email me and I can try to find that for you. Northeastern is a Research 1 university, so the research is a very large focus of us. So we are getting a lot of research awards, a lot of grants from the US government and external agencies. we have our global experiential opportunities, whether that be study abroad, global co-op, any kind of research, global research, and we do that on all 7 continents. So again, we're really proud of that. And we have alumni all over the world. So now I'm kind of going into experiential education, which in our, in the terms of Northeastern, we predominantly call co-op. So really, experiential powered learning at Northeastern is super important to us. I'll tell you the history of co-op in a second, but all co-op or experiential learning really means is that you are essentially learning by doing. And we find that students have the most success in their careers and in their time at university by actually learning in the classroom, learning the academics, and then applying those in the workplace, in the work setting. So I will go in a little bit more into detail about what the program looks like, how it's run, and this is the standard at Northeastern. However, most co-op schools in the United States have a very similar model. All right, so really students learning in the classroom and then going into the workplace. And I think the biggest, takeaway is that the employers that we work with, that we've had relationships with for a long time, they work very closely with us as well as with our faculty. And we do this because we want to ensure that students are graduating with the skill set and the expertise that they need to be successful in that employer. We don't want a disconnect from what we are teaching them and what the employer needs. So if the employer says we need students that are more well-versed in machine learning or SolidWorks or whatever, we will make sure that our faculty are teaching that when they come back into the classroom. So it's really an interesting model. So again, experiential learning integrates the classroom in the real world. Our students and any co-op school in the US, students can do work at industry, so they can work at a company. A lot of students do research. You can go and do things like projects, you can volunteer even. There are certain restrictions depending on the school, but for the most part, it's just working, and I would say that it depends on the student and what their interests are. So for example, if you are a pre-med student, so you want to be a doctor or whatnot, you may be working in a lab conducting research, even at the university on campus, or you may be working in a hospital. Whereas somebody who wants to go into finance will go right into a financial firm, for example, in the center of Boston, and they'll work there. So it depends on your interests, and we work with each individual student to prepare them for that. So yes, cooperative education, again, very, like we explained already, real world experiences. Our students in any co-op program in the US are integrated into the company or the employer that they're working for. Students are, we guide them to get these jobs, to obtain the interviews and accept the job. However, when they accept that job, it is a contractual relationship between them and the employer. Northeastern really steps back and says, we have kind of made the match, and now the relationship is with that person. So any non-disclosure agreements, any proprietary information is held by the company, and the student would sign any contract with the company just as they would as any kind of temporary employee of that company. And yeah, we have a very large co-op program at Northeastern. Over 7,700 students participated in co-op last year. Again, a little bit of background, and I think this is one of the reasons why Northeastern is kind of the standard for the co-op model in the US, mainly because we have been doing it for a very long time. In 1909 is when the co-op program was started, and back then Northeastern was a very small school. It was initially with 4 main companies, as you can see here. And it's really expanded in 2023 to almost 3,000 co-op employers in 110 countries. And we're almost in every state. We almost have employers in every state in the US as well, which is exciting. So we have a long history of co-op, and we really are kind of the standard or the model that a lot of other schools are trying to achieve. So it makes us feel nice about that. All right, like I said before, the cooperative education or co-op learning model really, it's a kind of cyclical, so it's circular, and it essentially is taking students in their first year at Northeastern. They come in first year students, they will go right into their classes, they will do a full year of classes. And then depending on how we, put them in a certain pattern, they will go either on co-op in January to June or July to December. So they're going on co-op for a 6-month period. After their first co-op, they return back to Northeastern and they take classes again, likely for 6 months for 2 full terms. And then they go on co-op again, and you can go through Northeastern, you can do up to 3 co-ops in a 5-year program. So you can do 18 months of full-time work experience at 3 separate companies. But it really is, preparing students for co-op, and that's one of the jobs that I have. Teaching classes for preparation for the work experience. You go on the experience and then you reflect on that experience. What could you have done better? What applications or knowledge do you need to learn to be able to do better on your next co-op or your full-time job experience after graduation? And then the benefits. I think a lot of people know the benefits of having work experience before you graduate. I would say that the difference between an internship and a co-op, I get this question a lot. And so why can't I do a summer, 3-month internship? Why do I have to do a co-op, or why should I do a co-op? And really, it's the time frame, I think, is the big one. A 3-month internship over the summer is really just, we call it an interview, right? So it's a short time. By the time the employer onboards you, hires you, gets you, involved in the project, you leave, because it takes that long to be able to learn something and start contributing back to the employer. Whereas the co-op model in most schools in the US, I would say they are between 4 and 8 months. At Northeastern, predominantly 6 months. So most students do 6-month co-ops. And the first couple of months is learning, learning as much as possible. And the next 4 months are contributing to that employer. So a lot of companies are really looking for students that can do a co-op for that amount of time. And it works well within Northeastern's, the format that we've created, especially for co-op students, because it's such an integral part of the university. So it's really, we have students that come into Northeastern, they don't know what they want to do. And we say, okay, co-op is for learning what you want to do, but also learning what you don't like. So it's best to learn that you don't like a job with a 6-month co-op rather than you doing the education for the next 4 or 5 years and then realizing you don't like to do that work, right? So I think it's a good model to be able to test out different careers even while you're in school before you even graduate. And then you can also pivot and change your direction if you really don't like that field of work. You can say, I don't like doing this. I want to shift and do something else because I didn't enjoy the work that I did for my co-op. Yes, job search and interviewing skills, we have around 140 people, such as myself, and we are co-op faculty that teach and advise students in their co-op search. So the first year, at the end of the first year of students' degree program, they will be assigned a co-op advisor. That would be me or one of my 139 other colleagues at the university. And we work with them through their entire process up until they graduate. So we work with them to build their skills in interviewing, to get their resume ready, to make sure that they are prepared to what work looks like in the workplace, and answer any questions along the way. So it's an interesting model. And again, most co-op schools put a large amount of funding into this resource to be able to have support for students to be able to find those jobs, rather than an internship model where it may be a little less supported, or it may be one office on campus. Co-op schools typically, advertise as such because they have the infrastructure and the support for that model. And one of the things that, people in my position at a co-op school would do is develop partnerships with employers. So not only maintain the partnerships that we've had with employers over many years and make sure that we are advertising jobs to students properly, we also develop new employers. So if students will come and say, I want to work in the aerospace field, or I want to work in the renewables space, we will look at our employers and say, we really need to create additional relationships with employers to make sure that students have those opportunities when they go apply for jobs. So we really try to match make the student interest and, finding employers to hire them. It takes out a lot of the challenge of students trying to find a job on their own because we have that built in. Okay. Yes, and I would say, for the most part, I think all of them actually in the US, for Northeastern at least, but I think a lot of other schools also do this model, is the positions are paid and they're full-time. So 40 hours a week, you are paid typically hourly, but some companies do it slightly different. You are, it's a competitive market, so you are paid relatively well for a student, typically at that age in your college career, we say. And yeah, it ranges from some students do 4-month co-ops all the way up to 8-month co-ops. So you could be there for a significant amount of time at these companies. Any international student, you would need curricular practical training, which is CPT. Essentially, it's the work authorization to be able to work legally in the United States. And the co-op schools will be able to sign off or obtain that legal work permit or option for students, because it is an integral part of the education model at Northeastern or any school, co-op school in the US. So it makes also having international students do co-op a lot easier if it's part of a co-op program, because just the work authorization is taken care of by the school typically. So yes, like I was saying, the typical co-op is, 35, 40 hours a week. We have some flexibility. And again, this is most schools, usually 6-month, but we have 4 and 8-month. The way that we do it at Northeastern is slightly different than some schools. So when you are doing a co-op, you are essentially enrolled at the university for that 6 months while you're working full time. However, you do not pay tuition. You're enrolled as a kind of placeholder on your transcript, but you don't pay any money. You don't pay for a class. It's not like an internship class or anything. You are just simply going to work for 6 months, and then you come back and you resume your education and you pay for classes. So it's a nice way for students to be able to help pay for their college, by going and doing a 6-month job and then coming back and using some of that money to pay for their tuition for the next semester, etc. So obviously, we try to make sure that the job that you would be doing aligns with your degree program. That's really important, especially for international students, non-US citizens. You are bound, or you're held to that restriction. So if you are a software engineer and you want to do a finance role, the US government will say you cannot do that because you are in school to, be an engineer, be a software engineer. This is the kind of work that you are coming to the US to learn how to do. So you have to do a job in that field. But again, this is all things that co-op schools will be able to give you that information. So you have everything and you know the entire process to be able to get that proper work authorization within the restrictions of your visa. Again, I would say that this is a little bit pertaining to Northeastern and specifically, but yes, let's see here. I'm not going to go too much into it. I did get a question about which language scores are required, or what language, I guess scores. So we do require certain language scores. It depends on the college, and I know every university in the US will require a language score to be able to enter the university to, be accepted. We also require a certain language score. It may be the same or it may be slightly different for going on co-op. And we do this because we want to make sure that students have the English language capacity to be able to communicate in the workplace. And I think it's really important to be able to do that, just so the employer is comfortable speaking with students. And typically it's not very high, but it's just a standard, if you get into the college in the US and you apply and you are accepted, then likely it's probably the same score. But we just want to make sure that there is typically that requirement. Again, there are certain GPA requirements for pretty much any co-op school. So if you fall below a certain GPA, they'll say you're not ready to go on co-op. We don't think that, you have the capacity to, work, and we're worried about that. So we will recommend that you take classes for that semester and then maybe do a co-op the following semester if you get your grades up. So there are, again, a lot of different ways that students are supported by people like me throughout the entire college, 4 or 5 years to be able to make these decisions. So you have somebody that's guiding you in these co-op programs. And then one other thing that we do offer at Northeastern, and I think they do at other co-op schools as well, is a co-op prep course. So we call it our Introduction to Cooperative Education, and this is a 1-credit course. We don't require students to pay for it. It's free, but we require all students take it if you are enrolled at the university. And the course is taught by me or one of my colleagues. We talk about things like resumes, identifying your career goals or what you want to do. We go through cover letters, your LinkedIn, make sure your social or online media presence is perfect and professional before you start applying for jobs. We work with you to apply for jobs based on your skill set, what we think you'd be good at. We advise you in those areas. We work with you through interviews. We prepare for interviews. And then when you get a job, we work with you to, from everything from how do I get to the job? Can I take the train? Do I need to drive? As well as, you are working on the job and you are facing, some issues maybe with your boss or something. We are the point of contact for you to be able to reach out to and ask these questions. So you'll always have support. And that's the same with every co-op school or any school in the US that offers this co-op program, is that, again, you are supported and it's not just you go do an internship and you're on your own. So we maintain that relationship between ourselves and you, the student, as well as with the employer, to make sure that we make sure that you're supported the whole time. Again, very basic. The co-op timeline, I think, is 4 months, 6 months, or 8 months. It's pretty standard. January to June, July to December is the most common. There's a lot of information on this, but I won't go through the whole thing. All right. And again, very basic information. What you would do is, you would essentially say, I want to do a co-op. It's not required. Not all students do it. The great majority do. We prepare you, you apply, you interview, and then you accept the job. And again, we are with you through the whole process. Yeah, nearing the end here. So this is Northeastern specific, but again, it's representative of most schools that do co-op in the US. So across, the 47 states, like I said, we have co-op employers and students working, and then we have students working all over the world. And in my role specifically, I work with engineering students to find them jobs outside of the US so they can have that different work experience. And we have a lot of students that actually that do their 6-month co-op in Japan, and they love it. It's a amazing opportunity for them. Yes, again, I think this is all information that I've discussed, but we create these industry partnerships, research partnerships, to make sure that students have the opportunities to be able to find really great jobs that you may not have had that opportunity by just applying by yourself or just like cold emailing or applying on LinkedIn. A lot of that is really challenging, but we have that support and we've created those relationships over, 100 years, I guess, a very long time. All right. And again, Northeastern specific, but we work with most of the largest companies in the world, I would say. There really aren't that many companies that we don't work with. We have a very large, I guess, population of employers that are in the startup field. So, a lot of students, they want to work for the large companies, but they also want to work for startups. And Boston, in the area that we live in, is very good for that because a lot of employers in the startup space are growing in this area. And so students are lucky that they can participate without even, leaving the area. And yes, again, most co-op schools have this support. They have co-op coordinators, which is me. We have many other offices that support students with their visas, with the proper work authorization. We have global offices that help international students. And, we have offices that also help with full-time job search, because we understand that the majority of students that are coming to the US, if you're an international student, the majority want to work in the US after graduation. And we do know that. And so in all co-op schools will know that. So we have a team not only that supports while you're doing your co-op, but we have a whole separate team that helps with your full-time job search after you graduate. And we work very closely with them to be able to find you jobs after graduation. So yeah, I think that's about it. Here are some of our students doing really cool things. We have students, one of my students just went to Antarctica. We have students at SpaceX every semester, Amazon Robotics, really interesting things. And I think they're doing pretty amazing things throughout the world. So yeah, that's all I have. I went through that fast, but.
Thank you, Sally. So now it's time for Q&A. If you have any questions, please type in your question in the Q&A box. We have about 10 minutes. So I have one question. You mentioned
Sure.
that a lot of students do co-op outside of the US. And do you assist students if the students need a visa to work in that country, in other country? Do you assist for those visa process? And also, I guess most of the students need extra money to, even if it's paid co-program, they still need extra money to live in abroad.
Yes.
So
yes.
Do you have any scholarship or financial aid for students?
Yep. Absolutely. So yes, we have a full visa team that helps with students specifically to obtain the correct visa to do a co-op outside of the US. And that may be an Indian student that wants to co-op in Germany, or, you know, a US student that wants a co-op in Ethiopia. You know, it ranges, but we have people that support that specific thing. And then in terms of financial, yes, at Northeastern, we have scholarships that support students, a few different scholarships that support students. They can get up to $6,000 with one scholarship. There are others you can obtain, I think it's around 5,000 or a little bit more for those scholarships. So there is a lot of support, and every student receives some kind of financial, you know, support when doing a co-op out of the US. I work very closely with Georgia Tech, Purdue, some of the larger schools, University of Pennsylvania. And I know that, you know, the Ivy League schools, for example, I know that most of these schools also have very generous funding for global co-ops or co-ops outside of the US. We work together very closely because the co-op field is very specific kind of in the US and very niche, but the global co-op field is also very small. It's a lot smaller. So I know, you know, my colleagues at all these other universities, they do the same thing, and they have funding for students to be able to do that.
Thank you. So we got one question. It was explained that students do not have to pay tuition during co-op periods, but is there any minimum fee that needs to be paid? Example, enrollment fee to be registered in the school.
Yes, so I believe, I'm not entirely sure about an enrollment fee, but most students, while they are on co-op, they're still living in the area unless they move. So they will still be paying for their housing. If they're on campus, they would still pay housing. They would still pay for their health insurance. Most students have health insurance through Northeastern, some through their parents. So those are all fees that you would have to pay. But you are just not paying the tuition, the actual fee per class or credit hour. So yes, it depends on what you do. If you have meals, if you join the gym, those are all additional fees. But if it's just, you know, you're not paying the largest fee is really the classes. So you're not paying that.
To aid it up to the Sally's comments, actually, we don't have the student need to pay the enrollment fee, but for international students, we have a various amount of like $100 or $200 per year. It's called international student fee. But besides that, like if you still maintain the stay in the US, and another like international student health insurance fee. Besides that, I don't remember we have other, you know, fees the student need to cover. Yeah, during the co-op.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good information. I didn't know that.
So any other questions from the participants? If not, Sally, do you have any final words to the participants?
No, I don't think so. I mean, mainly just if you have questions, you know, you all have my email. So feel free to reach out to me, even if you are looking to apply to Northeastern for your undergraduate, your graduate program, or if you want to apply to any other co-op schools in the US. You know, we know them all. The co-op programs in the US are all very interconnected. So, you know, if you want to apply to Georgia Tech or Purdue or any of these schools, let me know. I can't help you get in, but I can give you the information and the contact people in those co-op offices.
Thank you.
Yes.
Wait, one more question. So if I hope to graduate the university in 4 years, is joining this program available?
So if completing the program in 4 years, we do, is that the question? Completing in 4 years, or I want?
And
yeah.
He or she wants to know about the alumni, like how alumni graduated within 4 years or 5 years.
I see. Yes. So yes, students graduate in different lengths. You can do a 4-year program, you can do a 5-year program. It depends if you do a 5-year program, you can do 3 co-ops. If you do a 4-year program, you can only do 2. So a lot of students try to get as many co-ops as possible because they're looking to be employed by maybe one of those co-ops after graduation. And it gives you more of an opportunity to do that. I don't have the exact international student numbers, but for US students or students that are US citizens, it's a little different because the visa is a little bit easier, the work permit is easier. But for those students, I think it's in my college in engineering, I think it's something like 99% are employed full-time within 3 months of graduation. Because we have the co-op model and they've had that experience. For international students, I don't have the exact percentage, but I can tell you that any international student that goes to a co-op school and has this co-op experience is going to be a lot more marketable to full-time employers when you graduate, because you just have the work experience in the US, and that's really what a lot of companies are looking for.
Thank you. And Elva, any final words?
I think, like Sally said, the co-op or CPT, the opportunity to provide you the real world working experience is combined with your class learning. Then, especially for the international students, if you only work on yourself, it's not easy, but the universities, like at Northeastern or other universities, if they are the co-op school, they will provide you the resource and the support. Just, use this and no hesitate.
Absolutely. I wish I went to Northeastern. I love working there because I wish I had gone there. It would have been easier to find a job after graduation.
So I guess it tells us everything where to go. So thank you so much for everyone to join our session today. And Sally, thank you so much for waking up so late.
No problem. Thank you.
10 a.m. No, 10 p.m. or 11.
Yes, 10 p.m.
Okay. So thank you so much. And thank you, Elva, for coming to the venue. So thank you everyone again for attending. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact EducationUSA. And EducationUSA has a lot of exciting events coming up. So please check the American Center Japan website for more details. So this concludes the webinar. Thank you very much for attending. Hope you have good night and good day. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Bye,
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.